Hello, and welcome back to another evening of shared stories and deep dives. Tonight, we're settling in for a long one, and I do mean long. We're going to spend the next couple of hours walking through the entire world of Dexter. The lore, the characters, the hidden details, and the connections that most people miss on their first, second, or even third watch. And I'll tell you right now, this is the kind of story that genuinely gets darker every single time you come back to it. So get comfortable. Grab a blanket, turn the lights down if you haven't already, and just let this wash over you. If you drift off at some point, that's completely fine. I'll still be here talking, and wherever you pick back up, there'll be something worth hearing. But if you're sticking around for the whole ride, I promise you we're going to cover things tonight that will make you rethink characters and scenes you thought you already understood. Before we get into the heavy stuff, let's just set the stage for anyone who might be new to this world, or for anyone who watched the show years ago and needs a refresher. Dexter is a television series that first premiered on Showtime on October 1st, 2006. It ran for 8 seasons, wrapping up its original run on September 22nd, 2013. But the story didn't end there. The franchise came back with Dexter New Blood in 2021, then a prequel series called Dexter Original Sin in late 2024, and most recently Dexter Resurrection, which started airing in the summer of 2025. So we're talking about a world that has been building and expanding for nearly 2 decades now. The whole thing started with a series of novels by Jeff Lindsay, beginning with Darkly Dreaming Dexter, published in 2004. The first season of the show follows that book pretty closely, but after that, the TV series went in its own direction entirely. The novels actually got kind of wild later on. Jeff Lindsay introduced supernatural elements to the story that the show deliberately avoided. The television version kept everything grounded in psychology and realism, which honestly made it scarier. So what's the basic setup? On the surface, it sounds almost like a dark comedy premise. Dexter Morgan is a forensic blood spatter analyst who works for the Miami Metro Police Department. By day, he helps homicide detectives solve murders. By night, he commits them. He's a serial killer, but not a random one. Dexter follows a strict set of rules taught to him by his adoptive father, Harry Morgan. These rules, known as the Code of Harry, dictate that Dexter can only kill other murderers. People who have slipped through the cracks of the justice system, people who got away with it. And that's the hook that made millions of people fall in love with this show. We're not just watching a serial killer, we're rooting for one. Every single viewer who gets invested in Dexter becomes a little bit complicit in what he does. You catch yourself hoping he doesn't get caught. You catch yourself agreeing with his logic. And that slow realization that you're cheering for a man who wraps people in plastic and cuts them into pieces is part of what made Dexter one of the most groundbreaking shows on television. It genuinely pioneered the morally ambiguous anti-hero in a way that hadn't really been done before on the small screen. Sure, Tony Soprano was complicated, but you weren't watching him methodically hunt and butcher people while nodding along. The show is built around Dexter's internal monologue, this dry, detached, oddly funny voice that narrates everything he's thinking. And that voice pulls you in from the very first episode. The pilot opens with Dexter driving through Miami at night, and his thoughts are laid bare for us. He tells us straight up that he doesn't know what made him the way he is, but whatever it was left a hollow place inside. He says that people fake a lot of human interactions, but he feels like he's faked them all, and he fakes them very well. And he calls it his burden. Right there, in the first minute, the show is telling you exactly what this man is, while simultaneously making you feel sorry for him. That's a magic trick, honestly, and then there's the world around him. Dexter doesn't exist in isolation. He's surrounded by people who have no idea what he really is, and watching them interact with him while we know the truth creates this constant, delicious tension. There's Deborah Morgan, his adoptive sister. Deb is loud, foul-mouthed, emotionally raw, and fiercely loyal. She's everything Dexter pretends to be. Where Dexter fakes every human connection, Deb feels everything too much. She's a vice cop when we first meet her, desperate to prove herself and get into homicide. And her relationship with Dexter is the emotional backbone of the entire series. She loves her brother more than anyone in the world, and she has absolutely no idea that he's the most dangerous person in her life. Then there's Angel Batista, this warm, genuinely kind homicide detective who considers Dexter a close friend. There's Vince Masuka, the forensics tech with no filter and an endless supply of inappropriate jokes. There's Lieutenant Maria LaGuerta, ambitious and political, always working an angle. And there's Sergeant James Dokes. Dokes is important, and we'll get to him properly later, but I'll just say this for now. He's the only person at Miami Metro who looks at Dexter and feels something wrong. Something off. Everyone else sees a quiet, helpful lab guy. Dokes sees a predator wearing a mask, and it drives him crazy that nobody else can see it. The show also has this incredible aesthetic that's worth mentioning. Miami isn't just a backdrop, it's almost a character. The bright, sun-drenched streets, the pastel buildings, the boats at the marina. There's this jarring contrast between how beautiful everything looks and how ugly the things happening beneath the surface really are. Dexter even comments on it at one point. He says there's something strange and disarming about looking at a homicide scene in the daylight of Miami. It makes the most grotesque killings look staged. And I have to mention the opening credits because they're iconic. Every single episode starts with this sequence of Dexter going through his morning routine. Waking up, getting dressed, making breakfast. But the way it's shot makes everything look violent. A mosquito lands on his arm and he slaps it dead. He cuts into a piece of ham and blood-red juice runs out. He ties his shoes and it looks like he's tightening a garrote. Flossing his teeth looks like sawing through something. It's this masterclass in visual storytelling. The mundane made menacing. And the music by Daniel Lisht, this eerie Latin-influenced score, just ties the whole thing together. Rolf Kent composed the main title theme, and once you've heard it, you never forget it. It's playful and sinister at the same time, which is basically Dexter in a nutshell. The show was a massive hit for Showtime. The pilot gave the network its highest series ratings in nearly 2 years. And by season 7, the show was pulling in over 6 million total weekly viewers across all platforms. At one point, it was described as the most rented DVD box set in Netflix history back when Netflix was still primarily a disc-by-mail service. That's how much people love this world. But here's what I want you to keep in the back of your mind as we go through all of this tonight. On the surface, Dexter's entertaining. It's fun in a twisted way. You've got a charming protagonist, clever kills, cat and mouse dynamics with the police, and a dark sense of humor that keeps things from ever getting too heavy. At least that's how it feels on your first watch. But when you go back, when you really start looking at the details, the origins, the choices, the consequences, you start to see something much more disturbing underneath. You start to realize that this isn't really a story about a cool vigilante who kills bad guys. It's a story about generational trauma, about a child who watched his mother get butchered and spent his entire life being shaped by that moment. About a father who tried to control the damage and ended up making it worse. About the people who loved Dexter Morgan and were destroyed by that love, one by one. And that's what we're going to dig into tonight, layer by layer, starting with how it all began. Not in Miami Metro, not in a lab, but in a shipping container covered in blood. So let's go back, way back, before the code, before the kills, before any of it. To understand Dexter Morgan, you have to understand what happened to a woman named Laura Moser and why her death set everything in motion. Laura Moser was Dexter's biological mother. She lived in Miami with her 2 young sons, Dexter and his older brother Brian. Laura was involved in the drug trade, but not as a dealer. She was a confidential informant, feeding information to a police officer named Harry Morgan about the operations of a drug trafficker named Hector Estrada. Harry was her handler, he was her connection to the police, but Harry was also something else. He was her lover, and that's the first thread that, when you pull it, starts to unravel everything. Harry Morgan wasn't just some cop doing his job. He had a personal, intimate relationship with the woman he was using as an informant. His wife Doris was at home, eventually becoming pregnant with their daughter Deborah, while Harry was carrying on an affair with the mother of the 2 boys he would later adopt. The whole foundation of the Dexter story is built on Harry's secrecy and Harry's choices. Long before the code ever existed, Harry was already living a double life. Laura was in deep. She'd earned the trust of Estrada's associates, particularly a man named Hernandez. Estrada eventually assigned her to supervise drug shipments moving into Miami, which meant she was getting closer to the center of the operation. But she was also getting closer to danger, because another man in Estrada's crew, Santos Jimenez, had been watching. He'd seen Laura meeting with Harry. He knew something was wrong, and that's when everything fell apart. Jimenez and his men came for Laura. They took her from her home along with both of her children. Dexter was around 3 years old. Brian was a little older. The three of them were brought to a shipping yard and locked inside a cargo container. They weren't alone in there. Other people who had crossed Estrada were in that container too. And what happened next is the single most important event in the entire Dexter franchise. On Estrada's orders, Jimenez began executing the people inside the container. He used a chainsaw. Laura Moser was dismembered alive in front of her two sons. The show doesn't shy away from this. In various flashbacks across the original series and in the prequel Original Sin, we see fragments of this event from different perspectives. We see Laura trying to cover her children's eyes. We see young Dexter watching, frozen, unable to look away. We see the blood pooling on the floor of that metal container, and we know that Dexter and Brian sat in their mother's blood for what may have been days before anyone found them. The person who found them was Harry Morgan, the man who had been Laura's handler and her lover. The man whose dual relationship with her had, in many ways, created the exact situation that got her killed. Harry walked into that container and pulled those two boys out of their mother's blood. It changed him forever. People who knew Harry said that what he saw in that cargo container was something he never fully recovered from. Now here's where things get really complicated and where the story gets darker the more you think about it. Harry adopted Dexter. He brought him home, raised him as his own son alongside Deborah. But he didn't take Brian. The reason is genuinely heartbreaking. Brian, the older of the two brothers, was showing signs of serious psychological damage. At one point, Brian nearly smothered baby Deborah when she wouldn't stop crying. He attacked Harry when Harry scolded him for it. He broke a window. The behavior was escalating. Harry and Doris, his wife, made the agonizing decision to send Brian away with a social worker named Barbara, while keeping Dexter because they had grown attached to him. Think about that for a moment. Two brothers, both traumatized by the exact same event, both sitting in the exact same pool of their mother's blood. One gets a home, a family, a father who tries to guide him. The other gets sent into the foster system and forgotten. That single decision, made out of fear and practicality, would ripple forward through decades. Brian Moser would grow up without love, without guidance, without anyone trying to channel his darkness, and he would become the ice truck killer. We'll get to that later, but I want you to hold on to this point because it's essential. Brian wasn't born a monster. He was made into one by the same circumstances that made Dexter, minus the one ingredient that made the difference: a father. As Dexter grew up in the Morgan household, it became clear fairly quickly that something was different about him. Harry noticed it first. Young Dexter was killing neighborhood animals. Not impulsively, not the way a child might accidentally hurt a pet. Deliberately, methodically. Harry found the grave of a dog named Buddy that had been keeping Dexter's sick adoptive mother Doris awake with its barking. Dexter had killed it. But when Harry dug up the grave, it wasn't just Buddy's bones in there. There were others, multiple animals, buried carefully, hidden. Now, a lot of parents in that situation would call a psychiatrist, and Doris, to her credit, did want Dexter to see someone. She could sense that something was wrong, but she also saw goodness in him. She believed he could be reached. Harry saw something different. He saw the same thing that the container had put into both boys, this deep, fundamental damage that wasn't going to be talked away in therapy sessions. Harry recognized that Dexter's urges were real. They were powerful, and they weren't going away. And this is where Harry made the decision that defines the entire franchise. Rather than trying to suppress what Dexter was, rather than seeking professional intervention, rather than turning to the system for help, Harry decided to train him, to channel the darkness, to build a framework around the killing instinct so that it served a purpose, and most importantly, so that Dexter would never get caught. This framework became the Code of Harry. And we're going to spend a good chunk of time on the code because it's the beating heart of the entire story. But before we get there, I want to sit with something for a second. Harry Morgan is presented throughout the show as a hero, a loving father, a man who did the best he could with an impossible situation. And on your first watch, that's exactly what he feels like. You see him in flashbacks, patiently teaching young Dexter, guiding him, protecting him. You hear Dexter speak about Harry with reverence and gratitude. Harry saved him. Harry gave him a purpose. But when you go back and really look at what Harry did, the picture gets much more uncomfortable. Harry took a traumatized child who was exhibiting violent tendencies, and instead of getting him help, he turned him into a weapon. He taught a boy how to kill efficiently, how to avoid detection, how to fake every human emotion so convincingly that no one would ever suspect what he really was. And he did this not because there was no other option, but because Harry himself had a very specific worldview about justice and the failure of the legal system. Harry was a cop who had watched too many criminals walk free. He'd seen killers get off on technicalities, witnessed victims get no closure, and it had broken something inside him. When he looked at Dexter, he didn't just see a damaged child. He saw an opportunity, a way to correct what the justice system couldn't. And that realization, when it finally clicks for you, changes everything about how you see the show. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about the code properly, because without understanding the code, nothing else in Dexter's world makes sense. The code of Harry is deceptively simple. It has 2 core rules. Rule number 1 is don't get caught. That's the priority. Above everything else, Dexter must protect his secret. If he's exposed, everything falls apart. His life, his freedom, and the safety of everyone around him. Rule number 2 is only kill people who deserve it. Specifically, murderers who have escaped the justice system. People who got off on technicalities, or who were never caught in the first place, or whose crimes were never proven in court despite overwhelming evidence. Dexter isn't supposed to kill randomly. He's supposed to be a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Those 2 rules sound almost reasonable when you first hear them. And that's the genius of the writing. The code gives the audience permission to root for Dexter. It frames his killing as a form of justice, a dark public service. It lets you think of him as a vigilante rather than a monster. And it's only when you start pulling at the edges that you realize how deeply messed up the whole thing is. Harry didn't just give Dexter a couple of rules and send him on his way. He trained him, properly, methodically, over years. Harry taught Dexter how to stalk a target without being noticed. He taught him how to verify that a person was genuinely guilty before acting, using police databases and investigative techniques. He taught him about forensic evidence and how to avoid leaving any. He taught him how to create alibis, how to dispose of bodies so they'd never be found, how to clean a crime scene until it was spotless. But maybe the most important thing Harry taught Dexter was how to pretend to be human. See, Harry recognized early on that Dexter didn't feel things the way other people did. Empathy, love, grief, joy. Dexter experienced these as concepts rather than emotions. He could observe them in others, study them, even mimic them convincingly. But he didn't actually feel them. So Harry built an entire second curriculum around that. He taught Dexter how to smile at the right moments, how to make small talk, how to feign interest in other people's lives, how to maintain a girlfriend, hold down a job, attend social events. Everything designed to make Dexter look normal from the outside so that no one would ever suspect what was happening on the inside. This is where the show gets genuinely disturbing if you think about it long enough. Harry essentially told his adopted son that he was broken beyond repair, that real human connection was impossible for him, and that the best he could ever hope for was a convincing performance. And Dexter internalized that completely. For the majority of the series, Dexter genuinely believes he's incapable of love, incapable of real friendship, incapable of caring about anyone. Every relationship in his life, he filters through the assumption that he's faking it. Even when evidence suggests otherwise, even when his behavior clearly shows genuine emotion, he defaults back to the belief that Harry planted in him, that he's a monster wearing a human suit. Now, the prequel series Original Sin gives us a much more detailed look at how this training actually played out. The show is set in 1991 and follows a young Dexter, played by Patrick Gibson, as he transitions from a teenager struggling with violent urges into an active killer under Harry's direct supervision. Michael C. Hall, who played Dexter in the original series, provides the internal monologue voiceover, which is a really nice touch that connects the 2 versions of the character. In Original Sin, we see Dexter's first kill. While Harry is in the hospital recovering from a heart attack likely brought on by the stress of raising Dexter, Dexter notices something strange about one of the nurses. A woman named Mary who cuts out obituary notices from newspapers and exhibits unsettling behavior. Dexter investigates and discovers that Mary has been secretly administering lethal injections of potassium nitrate to patients. She's a serial killer hiding in plain sight in a hospital. Dexter finds a folder of trophies she's kept from her victims, confirming her guilt beyond any doubt. Harry, lying in his hospital bed, realizes what Dexter has found, and he makes a decision that changes everything. He gives Dexter permission to kill her. This is the moment the code stops being theoretical and becomes real. Dexter plans the murder meticulously, confronts Mary, and disposes of her body in Alligator Alley, a remote lake area. He keeps her earrings as a trophy, which is actually a mistake since Harry had told him not to take souvenirs. But the kill itself is clean, it's successful. And when Dexter comes home and tells Harry how it felt, he admits that killing her felt good. Harry, overwhelmed with guilt and fear for what he's unleashed, struggles to hold back tears. Dexter's second kill follows not long after. A man named Tony Ferrer, a loan shark responsible for the deaths of a mother and her son. Dexter stalks him, gathers evidence, and takes him to a makeshift kill room at a Jai Alley venue. He kills Ferrer and dumps the body in a swamp. And just like that, the pattern is established. The ritual, the verification, the plastic, the kill, the disposal. This ritual becomes Dexter's signature throughout the original series. He wraps his kill rooms in plastic sheeting. He restrains his victims on a table. He shows them evidence of their crimes, forces them to acknowledge what they've done. He takes a blood sample on a glass slide as a trophy. Then he kills them, dismembers the body, puts the pieces into black trash bags, and dumps them in the ocean from his boat, the slice of life. It's methodical, clinical, and deeply personal. Every kill follows the same steps. It's almost liturgical. But here's something that was revealed in Season 8 that completely reframes the code and everything Harry did. A neuropsychiatrist named Dr. Evelyn Vogel arrives in Miami and reveals that she helped Harry create the code. Harry didn't come up with the system on his own. He consulted a professional. Vogel had studied psychopathy and worked with Harry to design a framework specifically for Dexter. She's the one who helped determine the rules, the emotional conditioning, and the psychological structure that would keep Dexter functional. This is huge when you stop and think about it. The code wasn't just a desperate father's improvisation. It was a clinical experiment performed on a child. A neuropsychiatrist and a police officer sat down together and designed a system to turn a traumatized boy into a controlled killer. They didn't try to heal him. They didn't try to address the root trauma. They decided the killing couldn't be stopped, only directed, and they built a machine to direct it. Vogel even refers to Dexter as her creation at various points, which tells you everything about how she sees him, not as a patient, not as a person, as a project. And the darkest part of all of this? The code worked. For decades, it functioned exactly as designed. Dexter killed hundreds of people, all of whom were murderers themselves, and he was never caught. He maintained a normal-looking life, held down a job, had relationships, raised a child. The code did exactly what Harry and Vogel intended. But the cost was enormous. The code convinced Dexter that he wasn't human, that he was incapable of love, that every meaningful moment in his life was a performance rather than something real. And that belief, which Harry planted and the code reinforced every single day, may have caused more damage than the shipping container ever did, because the trauma in the container happened to Dexter. The code was something done to him deliberately, by the people who were supposed to protect him. I think one of the most interesting questions the show raises, even if it never answers it directly, is whether Dexter actually needed the code at all. Was he genuinely incapable of empathy, or did Harry's conditioning simply prevent him from ever developing it? There are moments throughout the series where Dexter shows what looks a lot like real emotion. Real love for his sister, real affection for his son, real grief when he loses people. And every single time, Dexter dismisses it. He tells himself it's just the mask doing its job, because that's what Harry taught him to believe. If Harry had taken a different path, if he'd sought proper psychological treatment for a traumatized 3-year-old instead of building a kill protocol, would Dexter Morgan have turned out differently? We'll never know, but the possibility alone makes the whole thing tragic in a way that goes far beyond a simple serial killer story. All right, with the code in mind, let's talk about how Dexter actually lives, the day-to-day, the double life, and the concept that sits at the very center of who he thinks he is. Something he calls the Dark Passenger. The Dark Passenger is Dexter's name for his compulsion to kill. And throughout most of the series, he treats it like it's a separate entity living inside him, almost like a possession. It's not him doing these things. It's the dark passenger driving, and Dexter is just along for the ride. He talks about it constantly in his internal monologue. When the urge to kill builds up, he says the dark passenger is getting restless. When he gives in and makes a kill, he says the dark passenger is satisfied. When he tries to resist and it becomes unbearable, he talks about the dark passenger clawing at the walls. For years, Dexter believed this concept came from Harry. He thought his father had given him the term as a way to understand his urges. But in Season 7, during one of those internal conversations Dexter has with a vision of Harry, the truth comes out. Harry says very clearly, "I gave you the code. The dark passenger was all yours." Dexter came up with that on his own when he was about 12 years old. Harry just let it go because it seemed to help Dexter cope with feelings that were too complicated for a young boy to understand. This distinction matters enormously. The code was external. It was imposed on Dexter by Harry and Vogel. But the dark passenger was Dexter's own creation, his own way of separating himself from his actions. And the conversation that follows in that scene is one of the most psychologically revealing moments in the entire series. Dexter says the dark passenger can't just be a feeling. Harry asks him why not. And Dexter answers, "Because if there's no dark passenger, then I'm responsible for everything I've done." That line right there is the entire show in one sentence. The dark passenger isn't just a metaphor, it's a defense mechanism. As long as Dexter believes there's something else inside him doing the killing, something that got into him in that shipping container, he doesn't have to take full responsibility. He's a victim of his own darkness rather than an active participant in it. And the moment he considers the possibility that the dark passenger is nothing more than a convenient story he tells himself, the weight of every murder he's ever committed lands on his shoulders. Harry's ghost, or rather Dexter's internal projection of Harry, pushes the point further. He says, "It sure is a whole lot simpler to just pin all the blame on something else, isn't it? It's much scarier to think that the dark passenger is no more real than I am." And he's right. The visions of Harry that Dexter sees throughout the series aren't ghosts. They're Dexter's own subconscious, externalized as his father. Harry isn't really there. The dark passenger isn't really there. Both are constructs that Dexter built to avoid facing himself. And that's genuinely chilling. Now, the novels by Jeff Lindsay actually went in a completely different direction with the dark passenger concept. In the books, the dark passenger is eventually revealed to be a supernatural entity, a kind of ancient parasitic force that attaches itself to people and feeds on darkness. The TV show's creators deliberately rejected this interpretation and kept everything rooted in human psychology, which was the right call, honestly, because the grounded version is scarier. A supernatural parasite gives you an excuse. A psychological coping mechanism gives you nothing. Let's talk about Dexter's daily life, because the tension of his dual existence is one of the most compelling parts of the show. Every morning, Dexter goes to work at the Miami Metro Police Department. He sits in his little lab, analyzes blood spatter patterns at crime scenes, writes reports, and helps homicide detectives piece together how murders happen. He's good at it, really good. His colleagues respect his work, some of them even like him in a distant sort of way. Dexter cultivates this image of a friendly but slightly awkward lab nerd. He brings donuts, he makes small talk about the weather, he attends office parties and smiles at the right times. And the whole time he's scanning, he's listening to case details, he's checking police databases, he's identifying killers who might have slipped through. His position at Miami Metro isn't just a cover story, it's a hunting ground. The people he works with are real, fleshed-out characters who have no idea they're orbiting a serial killer. Angel Batista is a good, honest man who genuinely cares about Dexter. They eat lunch together. They've stood up at each other's weddings. Angel calls Dexter his friend, and he means it. And Dexter, in his internal monologue, will sometimes acknowledge that what he feels for Angel might actually be real friendship, before immediately dismissing the thought. Because the code says he can't feel real things, so he doesn't let himself. Vince Masuka is the forensics tech who works alongside Dexter. He's comic relief on the surface, constantly making inappropriate comments and oversharing about his personal life. But he's also extremely good at his job, which occasionally puts Dexter in uncomfortable positions when Masuka's analysis gets a little too close to something Dexter is trying to hide. Maria LaGuardia is the lieutenant who runs the homicide division. She's political, ambitious, and sharp. She plays office politics like a chess match, but she also has genuine investigative instincts. And those instincts would eventually lead her down a path that ended with her death, but we'll get to that. And then there's Dokes. Sergeant James Dokes is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated characters in the entire show. He's aggressive, confrontational, and he absolutely does not buy Dexter's harmless lab guy act for a single second. From the very first episode, Dokes is watching Dexter, following him, showing up where Dexter doesn't expect him. He tells Dexter flat out that he knows something is off about him. He says he can feel it. There's a really great scene early in season 2 where Dokes follows Dexter to an NA meeting. Dexter has been going to Narcotics Anonymous as part of a cover story, pretending that his erratic behavior is due to drug addiction. And Dokes, who's been surveilling him, walks in and sees Dexter at the meeting. He thinks it all makes sense now. Lots of cops turn to substances. He actually tells Dexter to stay clean and stay out of his way, and they won't have a problem. Dexter is amazed. Dokes accidentally stumbled onto the wrong conclusion, and it actually got him off Dexter's back. For a while, but Dokes never fully lets it go. And in season 2, when divers discover Dexter's underwater graveyard of dismembered victims in the ocean, triggering the Bay Harbor butcher investigation, Dokes gets closer and closer to the truth. He follows Dexter. He discovers the cabin in the Everglades where Dexter is planning a kill. And eventually, Dokes confronts Dexter directly and discovers the truth. Dexter captures Dokes and holds him prisoner in that cabin. He's faced with a choice: kill Dokes or find another way. And Dexter actually decides not to kill him. He comes up with a plan to frame Dokes as the butcher instead. Plant evidence, let the FBI arrest Dokes, and let anything Dokes says about Dexter be dismissed as the ranting of a caught killer. But before that plan can play out, someone else intervenes. Lila West, Dexter's unstable and obsessive girlfriend from that season, tracks down the cabin using Dexter's GPS. She finds Dokes locked up, and she blows the cabin up, killing Dokes and destroying all the evidence. She does this to protect Dexter, to bind herself to him, to make him need her. And just like that, Dokes is dead, framed as the Bay Harbor butcher, his name and reputation destroyed. I should mention that Dokes' famous line from the show became one of the most widely circulated internet memes of the late 2000s and 2010s. Surprise? Motherfucker. It's been remixed and referenced countless times online, which is kind of darkly ironic when you consider that the character who said it was murdered and framed for someone else's crimes. He was right about Dexter from the very beginning, and it got him killed. The FBI investigation into the Bay Harbor butcher was led by Special Agent Frank Lundy, who's actually a pretty fascinating character in his own right. He's methodical, patient, and genuinely brilliant. He nearly catches Dexter multiple times during season 2. And he develops a romantic relationship with Deborah along the way, which becomes important later when he's murdered during the Trinity Killer storyline in season 4. But Dokes' death is really the first major example of something that becomes a pattern throughout the series. Everyone who gets close to Dexter's secret gets destroyed. Dokes was framed and killed, and he was just the beginning. Let's talk about the person who was closer to Dexter than anyone else in the world. His biological brother, the Ice Truck Killer. Season 1 of Dexter builds around a mystery that starts out looking like a standard cat-and-mouse thriller between a serial killer protagonist and a serial killer antagonist. But by the end, it becomes something deeply personal and deeply sad. The Ice Truck Killer is one of the most memorable villains in the entire franchise, and the reason he hits so hard is because he isn't just a random predator. He's a mirror. The Ice Truck Killer's crime scenes are unlike anything Miami Metro has ever seen. His victims are dismembered with surgical precision, limbs separated cleanly, no mess, no wasted effort. But the truly distinctive detail is that there's no blood. The bodies are completely drained before they're cut apart. It's cold, clinical work. And Dexter, when he first encounters these scenes, is fascinated. He doesn't feel the horror that his colleagues feel. He feels admiration. Someone out there is doing work that's cleaner, more elegant, and more controlled than anything Dexter himself has achieved. But then the Ice Truck Killer starts leaving messages, not for the police, for Dexter specifically. A package arrives at Miami Metro containing a jar filled with a red substance. Inside the jar, Dexter finds a key. It's a key to room 103 at the Marina View Hotel. When the homicide team arrives at the room, they find it completely drenched in blood. Blood from at least 5 different bodies, none of whom are actually in the room. The blood was collected elsewhere and spread around deliberately. Dexter walks into that blood-soaked room and collapses. He has a sudden, violent flashback. Not to a crime scene he's processed, to the shipping container, to being a 3-year-old boy watching his mother being dismembered. He panics, staggers out of the room covered in blood, and tells his coworkers he skipped breakfast and felt faint from low blood sugar. The number 103 isn't random. Dexter eventually discovers, through research into newspaper articles from his childhood, that it connects to the date of his mother's murder, October 3rd. That number has been laced throughout the ice truck killer's crime scenes. The killer isn't just committing murders, he's telling Dexter a story, reaching back through time to the worst moment of Dexter's life and saying, "Remember." While all of this is happening, a man named Rudy Cooper enters Deborah's life. He's a prosthetics specialist, charming and attentive, and he sweeps Deb off her feet. They start dating seriously. Rudy seems perfect. He's exactly the kind of guy Deb deserves after her string of disastrous relationships. Dexter meets him, likes him well enough, and tells Rudy not to hurt his sister. But Rudy isn't who he says he is. The trail of clues that Dexter follows throughout the season, the 103 references, the bloodless victims, the shipping container connection, all of it leads to a devastating revelation. The ice truck killer is Brian Moser, Dexter's biological brother, the boy who was pulled from the same pool of blood and sent away while Dexter was kept. Brian has been watching Dexter for years. He found out who his brother became, where he worked, what he was. And he came to Miami not to hurt Dexter, but to reconnect with him. Everything Brian has done, every murder, every carefully arranged crime scene, has been a love letter, a breadcrumb trail designed to wake Dexter up, to make him remember who he was before Harry rewrote his story. Brian doesn't want to destroy Dexter, he wants Dexter to join him. And to get close, Brian did something incredibly calculated. He started dating Deborah, Harry's real daughter, the girl who got to stay in the family while Brian was discarded. Brian doesn't see Deborah as a person, he sees her as a symbol of everything that was taken from him. She's Harry's daughter, the child Harry chose to protect over Brian, and Brian's plan involves Dexter making a choice. Choose your real family, your blood brother, and help me kill the sister who replaced me. Or choose Harry's world, the code, the fake life, and lose me forever. The confrontation happens at the end of season 1. Brian kidnaps Deborah and takes her to an operating room he's set up for the kill. Dexter arrives and Brian lays out his case. They're the same. They were forged in the same blood, shaped by the same horror. Dexter has been pretending to be something he's not, wearing Harry's mask, following Harry's rules, when his true nature is the same as Brian's, unfiltered, free. And for a moment, Dexter actually considers it. There's this agonizing beat where you can see Dexter genuinely torn. Brian is the only other person in the world who knows exactly what Dexter went through, the only person who could understand him completely. Choosing Brian would mean embracing everything Harry tried to suppress. Choosing Deborah means killing the last connection to his biological family. Dexter chooses Deborah. He kills Brian, cuts his throat, and stages it to look like a suicide. On your first watch, this plays as a heroic moment. Dexter does the right thing. He protects his sister. He chooses love over blood. But when you go back and really think about it, the picture is much more complicated. Brian Moser wasn't born a killer. He was a little boy who watched his mother die and then was abandoned by the one man who could have saved him. If Harry had taken both boys, if Brian had been given the same structure and guidance that Dexter received, would he have turned out differently? Almost certainly. Brian didn't become the ice truck killer because of what happened in that container. He became the ice truck killer because of what happened after. The abandonment, the loneliness, the complete absence of anyone who cared whether he lived or died. And Dexter kills him for it. Dexter, the brother who got the better deal, who got the father and the code and the cover story, kills the brother who got nothing. And he does it to protect Deborah, the girl Harry chose to keep instead of Brian. The whole thing is this tragic loop where every choice Harry made ripples forward and destroys the people it was supposed to protect. The original Sin prequel adds another layer to this. In the finale of that series, after Dexter has completed his early kills and begun his official work at Miami Metro, After the Morgan family has a warm moment together, the camera pulls back to show Brian Moser watching them from outside. Standing in the dark, looking through a window at the family he was denied, the life he was supposed to have. It's a small moment, but it's absolutely devastating when you know what comes next. Brian's death haunts the series long after Season 1 ends. In Season 2, Deborah learns that Brian Moser, the man who nearly killed her, was Dexter's biological brother. She goes to Deputy Chief Matthews and he confirms it. He tells her that Harry kept them in the dark to protect them. And he says she should keep it to herself. More secrets, more lies, more of Harry's legacy suffocating the truth. And the revelation about Brian being Dexter's brother helps set up one of the most important investigations in the entire series. LaGuardia eventually connects the dots. She realizes that Brian Moser was the ice truck killer, that Brian was Dexter's brother, that both boys watched their mother get dismembered, and that the Bay Harbor butcher also dismembered his victims. She remembers that Dokes always said there was something off about Dexter. She notices that the butcher took blood slides and that Dexter is a blood spatter analyst. The connections pile up, and LaGuardia, who spent years dismissing the possibility that anyone other than Dokes was the butcher, starts looking at Dexter. But that comes later. For now, the thing I want you to hold on to is this. The ice truck killer storyline, which feels like a thrilling serial killer mystery on your first watch, is really the story of two brothers destroyed by the same event, saved unequally, and ultimately pitted against each other by forces neither of them chose. Brian didn't choose to be abandoned, Dexter didn't choose to be adopted, and neither of them chose to be in that container. But all three of those things happened because of Harry Morgan, and Harry's choices are the engine that drives everything. Now we need to talk about the season that most fans consider the peak of the entire franchise. Season 4, The Trinity Killer, and the murder that broke the show and its protagonist in ways that could never be repaired. Arthur Mitchell was played by John Lithgow, and his performance is, without exaggeration, one of the greatest villain portrayals in television history. Arthur is a church-going family man. He leads a home-building charity called 4 Walls, 1 Heart. He's a deacon. He has a wife named Sally, a son named Jonah, and a daughter named Rebecca. On the outside, he looks like everything Dexter wishes he could be. A killer who has managed to maintain a normal, functional life for over 30 years without anyone suspecting a thing. Dexter is obsessed with him, not in a professional sense at first, in a personal one. Dexter has always struggled with the idea that his double life is unsustainable, that eventually the mask will slip, the lies will pile up too high, and everything will collapse. And here's Arthur Mitchell, decades into the game, seemingly having cracked the code that Dexter can't. He has a family that loves him, a community that respects him, a career, a charity, a reputation. How is he doing it? Dexter infiltrates Arthur's life using the alias Kyle Butler. He presents himself as a divorcee who's down on his luck and missing his family. He volunteers with 4 Walls, 1 Heart. He gets close to the Mitchells. He studies Arthur the way he'd study a target, but this time he's not looking for evidence of guilt. He's looking for answers. How do you kill and still have a life worth living? And then the paint starts to chip. Arthur Mitchell's kill cycle is one of the most disturbing and methodical patterns in the entire franchise. Every cycle, he commits 4 murders, each one mirroring a trauma from his own childhood. First, he kills a young woman in a bathtub using a straight razor. This mirrors the death of his sister, who he accidentally caused to fall and die in a bathtub when he was a boy. Second, he forces a mother of 2 to jump to her death from a high place, mirroring his own mother's suicide, which happened after the sister's death. Third, he bludgeons a man to death, mirroring the rage he felt toward his abusive father. And fourth, he kidnaps and kills a 10-year-old boy, which represents the death of his own childhood innocence. For over 30 years, Arthur has been repeating this cycle in different cities across the country, always during his 4 Walls, 1 Heart building trips. Nobody connected the murders because they happened in different jurisdictions with different methods. And with years between each cycle, it took the FBI's Frank Lundy, who returned to Miami specifically to investigate the pattern, to even begin seeing the connections. And Lundy was murdered before he could finish the job, shot down in what initially looked like a random street crime. But here's what Dexter discovers when he gets inside the Mitchell family home. The perfect family man image is a prison. Arthur is a domestic tyrant. His wife Sally lives in constant terror. She flinches when he raises his voice. She apologizes compulsively. She hands over her jewelry and cash without protest when Arthur demands it, including her wedding ring. His son Jonah is beaten down, desperate for escape, constantly urging his mother to leave. His daughter Rebecca is controlled and surveilled. The Mitchell family dinner table has the surface appearance of warmth and togetherness, but underneath it's a hostage situation. There's a scene where Arthur comes home and the family is eating without him. The change is immediate. Sally jumps out of her chair and starts apologizing. The kids go silent. Arthur demands all of Sally's jewelry and any cash she has. When she hesitates to give up her wedding ring, Arthur lunges for her. Jonah tries to intervene. Arthur snarls that Jonah is lucky he doesn't pull the fillings out of his teeth. And as soon as Arthur leaves the room, Jonah begs his mother to leave. She says they'd live in fear. Jonah says, "We already do." This is the answer Dexter didn't want to find. Arthur Mitchell hasn't cracked any code. He hasn't figured out how to balance killing and living. He's just better at hiding the damage. Behind the church smiles and charity work, Arthur's a monster in every sense of the word, not just to his victims, but to the people who share his home. The perfect family man is a lie. And by the time Dexter realizes this, he's already in too deep. Arthur figures out that Kyle Butler isn't who he says he is. He discovers Dexter's real identity through the white pages, and everything escalates. Arthur breaks into Deborah's apartment looking for Dexter, trashing the place when he realizes it's the wrong Morgan. The hunt is on. And Dexter makes a fatal mistake. He hesitates. He's had multiple opportunities to kill Arthur throughout the season, but he keeps delaying. First because he's studying Arthur, then because circumstances get complicated, then because he's distracted by his own family struggles. Every delay gives Arthur more time, more room to maneuver, more chances to strike back. The season 4 finale is called The Getaway, and it's one of the most devastating hours of television ever produced. Dexter finally catches Arthur. He gets him on the kill table. Arthur, in his final moments, is eerily calm. He tells Dexter that it's already over in a way that Dexter doesn't fully understand at the time. Dexter kills him, goes through the ritual, disposes of the body, and heads home. On the way home, he finds a voicemail from Rita on his phone. She's saying she forgot her ID and had to come back to the house before catching her flight. She'd been planning to leave early for their honeymoon in the Keys. Dexter had begged her to go that morning, wanting to get her out of Miami while he dealt with Arthur. But she came back. She came back to the house. Dexter calls Rita's phone. It rings from inside the house, from her purse sitting on the table. He hears his infant son Harrison crying. He follows the sound to the bathroom, and he finds Rita, dead, in the bathtub, bled out, her blood filling the tub and pooling on the floor. And there, sitting in the blood, is baby Harrison, crying. This is the image that defines the entire series. Because it's not just a murder, it's a mirror. Dexter was 3 years old when he sat in his mother Laura's blood in that shipping container. Harrison is an infant sitting in his mother Rita's blood in a bathtub. The cycle has repeated. The exact trauma that created Dexter has now been inflicted on his son. And it happened because of Dexter, because he hesitated, because he played games with Arthur instead of killing him when he had the chance, because he thought he could study a monster and learn from him without consequences. Arthur's killing of Rita followed his established pattern perfectly. She was the bathtub victim, a young woman murdered in the exact same way Arthur had been killing women for 30 years. He chose Rita specifically because she was Dexter's wife. It was his final act of revenge. A message that said, "You think you can hunt me and go home to your family? Here's what happens to your family." Years later, the Dexter New Blood series added an even more disturbing detail. In episode 7 of New Blood, Harrison, now a teenager, tells Dexter that he remembers everything about that night. He didn't just sit in Rita's blood, he saw Arthur Mitchell. He saw a naked man walking toward him after killing his mother. He remembers the face. He remembers the blood. He was an infant, and the trauma imprinted on him completely. Harrison remembered being born in blood, just like his father. The season 4 finale was the last episode overseen by showrunner Clyde Phillips before he departed the series to spend more time with his family. It's widely considered the creative peak of the entire franchise. Behind the scenes, the production went to extreme lengths to keep Rita's death secret. Only essential cast and crew were allowed on set during filming. Scripts and DVDs were watermarked. Fake alternate endings were filmed. Julie Benz, who played Rita, has said she found out about her character's death at the last minute and was devastated. She felt like she had let Rita down, that maybe if she'd fought harder for the character in the writer's room, things could have been different. And here's a detail that makes it even more poignant. During the filming of Season 4, Michael C. Hall, the actor who plays Dexter, was privately dealing with a diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was undergoing treatment while continuing to work on the show. The production's makeup and wardrobe department subtly adjusted his appearance to mask the physical effects of his illness. So while Dexter was on screen grappling with the loss of his wife and the failure of his double life, the man playing him was fighting for his own life off camera. After Season 4, the show was never quite the same. Phillips's departure and the loss of Rita fundamentally changed the tone and direction of the series. The seasons that followed had their moments, but most fans and critics agree that the show struggled to recapture the devastating brilliance of what came before, which, in a strange way, mirrors what happened to Dexter the character. After Rita's death, something in him broke. The mask still functioned, the code still operated, but something essential had been lost. The possibility that Dexter could have a real life, a real family, a real connection to another human being, died in that bathtub with Rita. And the consequences of that night were only beginning to unfold, because the next person to be destroyed by Dexter's secret was the one who loved him most. Deborah Morgan is, in a lot of ways, the real heart of the Dexter franchise. She's messy, emotional, profane, and fiercely protective of the people she loves. Where Dexter calculates every interaction, Deb leads with her gut. Where Dexter fakes his way through relationships, Deb throws herself into them head first, usually getting hurt in the process. She's the one character who feels everything at full volume, and that makes what happens to her over the course of the series unbearably tragic. For 6 full seasons, Deborah has no idea what her brother really is. She knows he's a bit odd, she knows he disappears at strange hours, she knows he has trouble expressing emotions. But she writes all of this off as Dexter being Dexter, her slightly weird, emotionally constipated, lovable brother who always seems to be there when she needs him. Meanwhile, the audience knows the truth. Every scene between Dexter and Deb is loaded with dramatic irony. When Deb tells Dexter she loves him, we know he's just come from a kill room. When she confides in him about a case, we know he's already working it from the other side. When she celebrates her promotion, we know it's built on a foundation of lies that Dexter has carefully maintained. And the show plays this tension beautifully for years, slowly tightening the screw until the moment it finally snaps. That moment comes at the end of Season 6. Deb has been promoted within the department and is working the Doomsday Killer case, tracking a religious zealot named Travis Marshall, who's staging elaborate murder tableaus based on the Book of Revelation. Dexter naturally has been tracking Travis as well. He gets to Travis first and takes him to a church to complete the kill, and Deborah walks in. She walks into that church and sees her brother standing over Travis Marshall's body with a knife. Dexter, covered in blood, literally caught in the act. There's no lie that can explain this, no alibi that can cover it. Deb sees exactly what Dexter is. The fallout in Season 7 is probably the most emotionally intense stretch of the entire series. Deb confronts Dexter at his apartment, where she's laid out his kill tools and his box of blood slides on the coffee table. She quietly asks him if he killed all those people. He says yes. She asks if he's a serial killer. He says yes. And Deb runs. She literally runs from the apartment. Dexter chases after her and catches up when she stops to vomit in the street. What follows is this agonizing negotiation between two people who love each other, trying to figure out how to exist now that the worst possible truth has been revealed. Dexter tries to explain the code. He tells Deb that Harry knew, that Harry trained him, that he only kills killers. And none of it makes it better. Deb is shattered, not just because her brother is a murderer, but because her father knew and chose to enable it rather than stop it. Everything she believed about her family is a lie. Deb's position is impossible. She's the lieutenant of homicide. Her job, her entire identity is built around catching killers and bringing them to justice. And now she knows that the biggest serial killer in Miami history is sitting across from her at family dinners. She should arrest him. She should turn him in. She should do her job. Instead, she tries to save him. She tries to control Dexter, to monitor his behavior, to make sure he sticks to the code. She tells herself that if she can just keep him in check, if she can just prevent anyone else from finding out, maybe they can get through this. Maybe Dexter can stop. Maybe things can go back to the way they were. They can't. While Deb is trying to manage the Dexter situation, someone else is closing in. Maria Lagerta never accepted that James Dokes was the Bay Harbor butcher. She always felt something was wrong with that conclusion. And in Season 7, she reopens the investigation. LaGuerta is smart and relentless. She gets a list of the 12 New Bay Harbor butcher victims that were identified after Dokes' death. She starts looking at police personnel who owned boats, people who could have accessed the ocean for body disposal. She narrows it down. And the trail leads straight to Dexter. He had moved his boat from one marina to another in 2007, right when the investigation was getting close to his location. The blood slides, the dismemberment pattern, the connections to Brian Moser, everything points to Dexter Morgan. Lagerta doesn't have enough for an arrest. But she has enough to be certain, and she sets a trap. She arranges a situation designed to force Dexter to reveal himself, and she's ready to bring it all crashing down. Deborah finds out what Lagerta is doing, and she's faced with the most horrifying choice of her life. The Season 7 finale is called Surprise, Motherfucker, which is a darkly fitting callback to Dokes' famous line. In the episode's climactic scene, Lagerta confronts Dexter. She has evidence, she has the theory, she's going to expose him. And Deborah arrives. Deborah has a gun. Lagerta is standing there, ready to bring Dexter to justice. And Deborah shoots her. She kills Maria Lagerta to protect her brother. A police lieutenant murders a captain to keep a serial killer secret. The moment Deborah pulls that trigger, something inside her dies. You can see it on her face. She doesn't cry immediately. She just stands there, looking at what she's done, and you can see the exact moment she crosses a line she can never come back from. Everything Deborah was, her integrity, her moral compass, her belief in justice, is gone. Destroyed to protect a man who, on some level, she knows doesn't deserve that protection. And here's the thing that makes this even darker on a rewatch. Deborah was right to fear that knowing Dexter's secret would destroy her. Before she found out, she was messy but functional, flawed but fundamentally good. After she found out, every decision she made was contaminated by that knowledge. She became a liar, an accomplice, and finally a killer herself. Loving Dexter Morgan turned Deborah from a good person into a broken one, and she never recovered. Now I want to back up for a moment and talk about something that gets revealed in Season 2, but takes on completely new weight once you know everything else. The truth about Harry Morgan's death. Throughout the series, we're told that Harry died of heart disease when Dexter was a young man. It's sad but natural, a good man taken too soon. Dexter visits his grave, talks to his memory, and the vision of Harry that appears throughout the show functions as a kind of moral compass. Harry is the guiding light, the voice of reason. Even in death, he's trying to keep Dexter on the right path. But in Season 2, Dexter learns the truth from Captain Matthews. Harry didn't die of heart disease. He overdosed on his heart medication. It was suicide. The official autopsy report confirmed it, but Matthews buried the report to protect Dexter and Deborah. Why did Harry kill himself? The answer is the darkest revelation in the first 2 seasons. 3 days before his death, Harry came to visit Dexter and walked in on something he wasn't prepared for. Dexter was dismembering a body, a man named Rhiness, one of his early kills. Dexter was happy. He showed Harry what he'd done, hoping for approval. "Look, Dad, I followed the code. I did what you taught me. Isn't this good?" Harry took one look at the grisly scene, at his adopted son happily chopping up a corpse, and he vomited. He told Dexter to stay away from him. And 3 days later, he was dead. Harry Morgan, the creator of the code, the man who spent years training Dexter to be a controlled killer, could not survive seeing the code in action. The theory was bearable. The reality was not. Harry built a monster, and when he finally saw the monster in full, it destroyed him. Dexter doesn't learn this until Dokes hints at it while imprisoned in the cabin. Dokes had been digging into Harry's death and discovered that the higher-ups at the department knew something they didn't want anyone else to know. He uses this information as leverage, refusing to tell Dexter the full truth unless Dexter lets him go. Dexter eventually goes to Matthews, who confirms everything. And when the truth hits Dexter, it reframes his entire life. The man he worshipped, the man whose code he followed with religious devotion, couldn't live with what he'd created. Harry killed himself because of Dexter. The code didn't save Harry. It killed him. On a rewatch, every scene where Harry's ghost appears takes on a completely different quality. Because now you know that the real Harry, the living, breathing man, looked at his life's work and chose death over living with it. The vision of Harry that Dexter sees isn't the real Harry. It's an idealized version that Dexter constructed to avoid facing the truth. The real Harry was horrified by what Dexter became. The ghost of Harry that guides Dexter through the series is just another mask, just another part of the performance. I keep coming back to this pattern because I think it's the core of what makes the Dexter franchise so disturbing on repeat viewings. Every person who discovers what Dexter really is meets a terrible fate. Harry discovered it and killed himself. Brian discovered Dexter's allegiance to the code over blood and was killed. Dokes discovered the truth and was framed and murdered. Deborah discovered the truth and became a killer herself. LaGuerta discovered the truth and was shot dead. The knowledge is toxic, it destroys everyone it touches. And that brings us to the final chapters, the endings and the beginnings, the ways the franchise tried to close Dexter's story, and the ways it kept reopening it. Because this cycle of violence and trauma didn't end with Season 8. It carried forward, through New Blood, through Original Sin, and into Resurrection. Let's start with how the original series ended, because it's important context for everything that came after. Season 8 brought Dr. Evelyn Vogel into the picture, the neuropsychiatrist who helped Harry create the code. Her arrival reframed Dexter's entire origin story. She revealed that Harry didn't improvise the code on his own. It was a collaborative project, essentially a controlled experiment performed on a traumatized child. Vogel referred to Dexter as her creation, which tells you exactly where she stood, not as a caregiver, but as a scientist observing her work. That season also introduced the brain surgeon, a serial killer who targeted people connected to Vogel. The brain surgeon turned out to be Daniel Vogel, Evelyn's own son, who killed his mother in front of Dexter. It's another mirror, another parent-child relationship twisted by violence and psychopathy. Meanwhile, Dexter had been planning to escape. He was going to take his son, Harrison, and his girlfriend, Hannah McKay, a fellow serial killer he'd fallen in love with, and flee to Argentina. Start fresh. Leave Miami, leave the code, leave everything behind. For a brief moment, it seemed like Dexter might actually get out. Then the brain surgeon shot Deborah. Deb survived the initial gunshot, but while recovering in the hospital, she suffered a massive stroke caused by a blood clot. The stroke was fatal. There was no recovery. Deborah was brain dead. Dexter walked into that hospital room and looked at his sister. The person who loved him more than anyone. The person who killed for him. The person who was systematically destroyed by the knowledge of what he was. And she was lying there, gone. Not dead yet, but gone. The Deborah he knew, the loud, profane, fiercely loyal woman who threw herself into everything, was already somewhere else. What was left was a body on a machine. Dexter disconnected her life support. He carried her body to his boat, the Slice of Life, and he drove out into the ocean. He buried her at sea. The way he'd disposed of so many of his victims. The parallel was deliberate and deeply uncomfortable. The one person Dexter truly loved, given the same treatment as the people he killed. Then Dexter drove his boat straight into an approaching hurricane, and he survived. The Season 8 finale showed Dexter alive, living in some remote, snowy location, working as a lumberjack. Just sitting there, staring into the camera, alive but empty. It was, to put it diplomatically, one of the most controversial finales in television history. Fans hated it. Critics tore it apart. The lumberjack ending became a punchline. After 8 seasons of building towards some kind of reckoning, the show let Dexter off the hook. He didn't face justice. He didn't die. He just left. But the story wasn't over. In 2021, the franchise returned with Dexter New Blood, a limited series that was explicitly designed to give the character a proper ending. Clyde Phillips, the showrunner who had left after Season 4, came back to oversee the project. And the premise was straightforward. What happens when Dexter tries to stop being Dexter and fails? New Blood is set roughly a decade after the original finale. Dexter has been living under the alias Jim Lindsay in a small town called Iron Lake, New York. He works at a general store. He has a girlfriend named Angela, who's the local chief of police. He's built a quiet, unremarkable life. And most importantly, he hasn't killed anyone in nearly 10 years. The dark passenger is dormant. The urges are suppressed. Dexter has, by all appearances, found a way to just stop. Then Harrison shows up. Dexter's son, the baby he left behind when he faked his death, has tracked him down. Harrison is a teenager now, and he's angry. He was abandoned by his father, raised without explanation, and he's been carrying the trauma of his mother's murder his entire life. He came to Iron Lake to find the man who left him. And Harrison's arrival reawakens everything. The stress, the emotional disruption, the fear of being discovered, all of it feeds the dark passenger. Dexter starts killing again. He targets Kurt Caldwell, a local man who turns out to be a serial predator kidnapping and murdering young women, keeping their embalmed bodies in a hidden display room. Classic Dexter territory, a monster hiding in plain sight. What makes the New Blood setting particularly effective is the contrast with the original series. Miami was bright, hot, crowded, and chaotic. Iron Lake is cold, isolated, and quiet. The snow and the frozen landscapes create a visual metaphor for what Dexter has tried to do with his urges. He's frozen them, put them on ice, buried them under layers of white. And when they thaw, when the dark passenger reawakens, the violence stands out even more starkly against the pristine backdrop. Blood on snow is more vivid than blood on Miami pavement. There's nowhere to hide it. Iron Lake also strips away all of Dexter's support systems. In Miami, he had the cover of a busy police department, a social network of colleagues, and the anonymity that comes with living in a large city. In Iron Lake, everyone knows everyone. His girlfriend Angela is the chief of police. His neighbor is a high school wrestling coach. There's no crowd to disappear into. Every strange absence, every unexplained errand, every moment of suspicious behavior is noticed and remembered. Dexter in Iron Lake is a predator in an open field, exposed in ways he never was in Miami. Harrison's role in New Blood is also fascinating because he represents the question the franchise has been circling since the beginning. Is the dark passenger genetic? Is it environmental? Is it both? Harrison was traumatized as an infant, just like Dexter. He grew up without a father, just like Brian. He's angry, volatile, and drawn to violence, just like all of them. But he also has something none of them had. Awareness. Harrison knows the pattern. He knows what happened to his father, what happened to his grandmother, what happened to his uncle. He can see the cycle from the outside, which means he has a choice that none of the other Morgans ever truly had. He can break it. Whether he actually does break it is the central question of the franchise going forward. Resurrection suggests that Dexter's survival complicates Harrison's attempt to end the cycle. You can't break a pattern by shooting it if the pattern gets back up. And maybe that's the whole point. But this time the consequences catch up. Harrison isn't a naive bystander. He's perceptive, damaged, and suspicious. He starts noticing things about his father, patterns, inconsistencies, and he begins to piece together the truth. The climactic reveal of New Blood is Harrison discovering what his father really is. Not through a dramatic confrontation like Deborah's, but through a slow accumulation of evidence and gut instinct. And unlike Deborah, Harrison doesn't try to save Dexter. He doesn't try to control him or rationalize the kills. Harrison sees his father clearly, sees the chain of violence that started in a shipping container and flowed through every generation, and he makes a choice. Harrison shoots Dexter with Dexter's consent. Dexter essentially tells his son to end it, to break the cycle. And Harrison pulls the trigger. It's an ending that mirrors the entire franchise. A child killing his father to escape the darkness that father created. Just as Dexter killed Brian, just as Harry's suicide was caused by Dexter. The violence loops back. The children always pay for the parents' choices, except it didn't end there either. In 2025, Dexter Resurrection premiered, revealing that Dexter survived the gunshot wound. He was resuscitated in an emergency room. The cycle that Harrison tried to break didn't break. Dexter is alive and he travels to New York City to find his son. The show features returning characters including Angel Batista and brings new actors into the fold, including Uma Thurman and Peter Dinklage. Phillips returned as showrunner once again, and the series was renewed for a second season in October of 2025, with plans for at least 3 seasons total. So Dexter Morgan, the man who faked his death once and was shot by his own son, is still out there, still alive, still carrying the dark passenger. The cycle that started in a shipping container refuses to end. And then there's Original Sin, which takes us in the other direction. Instead of moving forward, it goes back. All the way back to 1991, to a young Dexter Morgan navigating his first kills and his earliest days at Miami Metro. The prequel fills in details that the original series only hinted at. We see Harry's relationship with Laura Moser play out in real time through flashbacks. We see the moment Laura is taken to the shipyard. We see young Dexter and Brian in that container watching their mother die. We see Harry find them and make the choice to separate the brothers. The most powerful thing Original Sin does is show us how deliberate Harry's training of Dexter was. It's not a montage. It's not a quick flashback. It's an entire season of a father systematically shaping his son into a killer, teaching him when to strike, how to verify guilt, how to build a kill room, how to hide evidence. And you see the toll it takes on Harry, the drinking, the heart problems, the guilt that eats at him constantly. Harry knows on some level that what he's doing to Dexter is wrong, but he can't stop. He's too invested. The code has become his identity just as much as it's become Dexter's. The Original Sin finale is devastating in its final shot. After everything, after the kills, after the training, after Dexter officially joins Miami Metro's forensics department, the Morgan family has a warm moment together. Harry, Dexter, and Deborah dancing, laughing, looking for all the world like a normal, happy family. And then the camera pulls back to reveal Brian Moser standing outside in the dark, watching them through a window. The brother who was thrown away, the boy nobody saved. Original Sin was canceled in August of 2025 despite having been previously renewed, which means the prequel story won't continue beyond its single season. But that one season gave us something invaluable. It showed us the roots. Every choice, every lie, every betrayal that would echo forward through decades of killing and loss began right here. In Harry's affair with Laura, in Estrada's retaliation, in that shipping container, in the decision to keep one brother and discard the other. There's also an unnamed Trinity Killer prequel series that's been announced, which will focus on the early life and initial murders of Arthur Mitchell in the 1970s. Which means the franchise is continuing to dig backward into its own history, finding new layers of darkness in characters we thought we already understood. The thing that strikes me most about the Dexter franchise, taken as a whole, is how perfectly circular it is. Laura's blood created Dexter. Dexter's lifestyle led to Rita's murder. Rita's blood traumatized Harrison. Harrison's trauma led him to shoot his own father. And now Dexter has survived even that, suggesting the cycle might just keep going indefinitely. There's this almost mythic quality to it, like a curse in a fairy tale. The violence passes from generation to generation, changing shape but never disappearing. And that's what makes this story get darker every time you revisit it. On your first watch, you're caught up in the thrill. The cat and mouse games, the clever kills, the close calls. It's exciting, it's fun. But on your second watch, you start seeing the damage. You notice how every relationship Dexter touches turns toxic. You see the grief in Harry's eyes when he realizes what he's built. You feel the weight of Deborah's smile, knowing what's waiting for her. By your third or fourth time through, you stop seeing a thriller entirely. You start seeing a horror story about a family that was broken by violence and spent generations breaking each other in the same ways. Let's close out the heavy stuff with a few more details that really tie this world together. The smaller things that most people miss, the behind-the-scenes facts that add texture, and the connections that reward really obsessive fans. First, let's talk about the blood slides, because they're more important than a lot of people realize. They're not just trophies. They're the single thread that connects almost every major investigation and revelation in the entire franchise. Dexter's ritual involves taking a small sample of blood from each of his victims and preserving it on a glass microscope slide. He stores these slides in a wooden box, which he hides inside the air conditioning unit in his apartment. Each slide is a record, a name, a life taken. Over the years, that box fills up and it becomes the most dangerous object in Dexter's world. Because if anyone finds it, the game is over. and people do find it, repeatedly. Lagerta discovers a blood slide at a crime scene in Season 7. She recognizes that blood slides were the Bay Harbor butcher's signature. She remembers that Dokes was said to have taken slides at crime scenes, which was part of the evidence used to frame him. But Lagerta also knows that Dokes was a fingerprints man, not a blood guy. The slides don't fit, and that inconsistency is what sends her down the path that ultimately gets her killed. But before Lagerta, it's Deborah who makes the most devastating discovery. At the end of Season 6, after catching Dexter in the church, Deb goes to his apartment and finds the kill tools and the blood slide box laid out on his coffee table. That's the moment she knows for certain, not just that her brother killed one person, but that he's been doing this for years, decades. The sheer number of slides in that box tells its own story. The blood slides also connect back to Harry. In the code, Harry taught Dexter to take trophies as a way to maintain control. The slides were supposed to be a pressure release, a memento that satisfied the urge without requiring more killing. But they also became evidence, physical, tangible proof of every murder Dexter committed. Harry, the man who built the code around the principle of never getting caught, also built a habit into his son that created the single most incriminating piece of evidence possible. Beyond the slides, let's dig into some of the other antagonists who didn't make it into our main discussion, but who add important layers to the story. Because every season of Dexter is built around a central villain, and each villain forces Dexter to confront a different aspect of his own nature. Season 3 introduced Miguel Prado, played by Jimmy Smits. Miguel was an ambitious assistant district attorney whose brother Oscar was killed by Dexter in self-defense during a planned kill. Rather than becoming an enemy, Miguel and Dexter formed an unlikely friendship. Miguel discovered Dexter's secret, and instead of being horrified, he was fascinated. He wanted in. He wanted to be a partner in the killing. And for a while, it worked. Dexter and Miguel bonded over their shared belief that the justice system was broken and that some people deserved to die. Miguel was charming, enthusiastic, and seemed to share Dexter's values. But Miguel's moral boundaries were much more flexible than Dexter's. He started using the code as a cover for personal vendettas. He killed an innocent woman, a defense attorney named Ellen Wolfe, because she threatened his career. He wasn't using the code, he was abusing it. Dexter eventually killed Miguel. But the season's real lesson was about the code itself. The code only works if you follow it precisely. The moment you start bending the rules, interpreting who deserves it a little more loosely, the whole structure collapses. Miguel proved that the code isn't inherently moral, it's just a set of guidelines. And in the wrong hands, it becomes nothing more than a permission slip for murder. Season 5 dealt with the immediate aftermath of Rita's death. Dexter was grieving, disoriented, and vulnerable. He stumbled into a case involving a ring of influential men who had been kidnapping, raping, and murdering women. One of their survivors, a woman named Lumen Pierce, escaped and crossed paths with Dexter. What followed was one of the show's most interesting experiments. Dexter and Lumen worked together to hunt down each member of the ring. Lumen, who had been traumatized beyond what most people could survive, discovered that participating in the kills gave her a sense of closure. She developed her own dark passenger. But here's the part that stuck with me. After they completed their revenge, Lumen's dark passenger faded. The urges stopped. She didn't need to kill anymore. The trauma had been addressed in a terrible way, and the compulsion went away. She left Miami peacefully. This raised a question that the show never fully explored, but that hangs over everything. If Lumen's dark passenger could go away, why can't Dexter's? Is Dexter fundamentally different? Or did Harry's conditioning cement something that might otherwise have been temporary? If someone had helped 3-year-old Dexter process his trauma properly, would the urges have faded the way Lumen's did? We'll never know. But Lumen's departure is haunting because it suggests the possibility that Dexter's entire life might have gone differently if one person had made one different choice at the right moment. Season 6 was built around the Doomsday Killer case, which involved ritualistic murders staged as scenes from the Book of Revelation. The central twist was that Professor Geller, who appeared to be the mastermind, was actually dead the entire time. He existed only in the mind of Travis Marshall, who was carrying out the killings alone while hallucinating his dead mentor as a guiding presence. Sound familiar? It should. Travis Marshall was doing exactly what Dexter does with Harry. externalizing an authority figure, projecting a voice that tells him what to do, following instructions from someone who isn't really there. The Doomsday Killer storyline was a direct mirror of Dexter's relationship with his father's ghost. And if you're paying attention, it raises the unsettling question of whether Dexter's moral compass is any more real or reliable than Travis's hallucinated professor. Both are constructs. Both serve the interests of the person creating them. The only difference is that Dexter's construct tells him to kill bad people, while Travis's tells him to kill sinners. The mechanism is identical. Season 7, which we covered in detail with the Deborah and LaGuerta storyline, also introduced two important characters, Isaac Serko and Hannah McKay. Isaac was the head of the Koshka Brotherhood, a Ukrainian crime syndicate operating in Miami. He came to the city to avenge the death of his lover Victor, who Dexter had killed. And what made Isaac compelling was that he was the first antagonist who was genuinely Dexter's equal in terms of intelligence, composure, and danger. He wasn't unhinged like Brian. He wasn't hiding behind a family like Arthur. He was a professional, calm, articulate, and relentless. He also happened to be gay, and the show handled this with surprising depth for the era. His motivation wasn't about power or ideology, it was about love. He was willing to burn down everything in his path to avenge the man he loved. And Dexter, who had spent 7 seasons telling himself he couldn't feel real love, was confronted by a killer whose entire existence was driven by it. Hannah McKay was even more significant. She was a serial poisoner who had been involved in a killing spree as a teenager and had continued killing into adulthood. Dexter was supposed to kill her. She fit the code perfectly, but instead, he fell in love with her. And she fell in love with him. Hannah was the first person in Dexter's life who knew exactly what he was and loved him anyway. Not because she was trying to save him like Deb, not because she wanted to use him like Miguel, but because she was the same. Two killers who found each other and understood each other in a way that no one else ever could. Their relationship was toxic and dangerous, but it was also the most honest connection Dexter ever had. He didn't have to pretend with Hannah. She didn't need him to be normal. She just needed him to be real. Hannah would eventually become part of Dexter's plan to flee to Argentina with Harrison. And when that plan fell apart after Deborah's death, Hannah was left alone with Harrison while Dexter faked his death and disappeared. She raised Harrison for a time before the two eventually separated, which is how Harrison ended up searching for Dexter in New Blood. Now let's get into some of the other key victims from across the series who add crucial weight to the story when you look at them closely. Lila West from Season 2 is worth examining. She was Dexter's sponsor at Narcotics Anonymous and quickly became an obsessive, manipulative presence in his life. Lila was an artist living in a loft filled with ghoulish metalwork. She was charismatic, reckless, and deeply unstable. She saw Dexter's darkness as something beautiful and romantic. Where everyone else in Dexter's life tried to fix him or control him or ignore the signs, Lila embraced the darkness. She wanted to be part of it. Lila killed Dokes. She set the cabin on fire and let him burn. She did it to protect Dexter, to tie herself to him through shared guilt. And when Dexter realized what she'd done and rejected her, Lila tried to kill him by kidnapping Aster and Cody, Rita's children, and setting her own loft on fire with them inside. Dexter rescued the children and later tracked Lila to Paris, where he killed her. Lila is interesting because she's what happens when someone with no moral framework encounters the dark passenger. She didn't have a code, she didn't have Harry, she had nothing to channel the darkness, so it just consumed her. She's the cautionary tale version of Dexter's story. Without structure, without rules, the same impulses lead to chaos instead of controlled killing. Let me also touch on some of the things most people miss on a first viewing that reveal themselves later. Harry's affair with Laura Moser doesn't just provide backstory, it creates a chain of causation that connects every tragedy in the series. Harry sleeps with Laura while she's his informant. Santos Jimenez sees them together and reports back to Estrada. Estrada has Laura killed. Her sons witness the murder and are traumatized. Harry adopts one and abandons the other. The abandoned one becomes the ice truck killer. The adopted one becomes the Bay Harbor butcher. And the entire Miami Metro Police Department spends 8 seasons trying to catch killers who were ultimately created by one of their own officers' personal failures. The slice of life, Dexter's Boat, is more than just a plot device. It's named after a phrase that reflects Dexter's entire philosophy. A slice of life is supposed to mean an authentic, ordinary moment of everyday existence. Dexter named his boat after the concept of normalcy, the very thing he spends his entire life faking. And he uses that boat to dispose of dismembered body parts. The irony is almost poetic. There's also the matter of the opening monologue I mentioned at the very beginning. I don't know what made me the way I am. By the end of the franchise, we know exactly what made Dexter the way he is. The shipping container, Harry's training, the code, Vogel's clinical approach, the abandonment of Brian, the affair that started it all. Dexter says he doesn't know, but the show systematically answers that question over nearly 20 years of storytelling. And the answer is everyone around him. Now, I want to spend some time on the things happening behind the camera because the production history of Dexter is almost as interesting as the show itself. The series was created for television by James Manos Jr., adapting Jeff Lindsay's first novel. Manos wrote the pilot and set the visual and tonal template for the series. But after that initial episode, the real creative engine became the team of showrunners and writers who took the concept and ran with it. Clyde Phillips was the showrunner for the first 4 seasons, and his departure after season 4 is widely cited as the turning point where the show's quality began to shift. Phillips left to spend more time with his family, which is understandable, but the difference in the writing was noticeable almost immediately. Chip Johannesson took over for season 5, and then Scott Buck helmed season 6 through 8. Under Buck's leadership, the show went in directions that many fans found unsatisfying. Season 6's Doomsday Killer twist was criticized for being predictable. Season 7 was generally well received thanks to the Deborah and LaGuerta storyline, but Season 8 and its infamous lumberjack ending became a punchline in television history. The lesson here is that showrunners matter. The vision behind the camera shapes everything on screen, and when that vision changes, the show changes with it. Phillips was eventually brought back for every revival series. New Blood, Original Sin, and Resurrection all have his fingerprints on them, which is significant because it means the person who oversaw the show's creative peak is also the person trying to give the franchise a proper legacy. Whether that's working is a matter of personal opinion, but there's no question that Phillips understands the material better than almost anyone. Let me talk about the show's visual identity for a moment because it evolved in interesting ways across the franchise. The original 8-season run was shot in a 16:9 aspect ratio, standard for premium television of that era. The colors were bright and saturated, leaning heavily into the Miami setting. There's a deliberate contrast in the original series between the sun-drenched exterior shots and the dark, close interiors of Dexter's kill rooms and apartment. The world outside is beautiful. The world inside Dexter's head is not. When New Blood came along, the production shifted to a 21:9 ultra-wide aspect ratio. This was a conscious decision to give the revival a more cinematic, prestige television feel. The change was polarizing among fans. Some loved the visual upgrade, others felt it distanced the new show from the aesthetic that had defined the franchise. Original Sin used yet another aspect ratio, 18:9, splitting the difference between the original and the revival. Daniel Licht composed the music for the original series, New Blood, and associated projects. His work was essential to the franchise's identity. The score had this eerie, Latin-influenced quality that perfectly complemented the Miami setting, while constantly reminding you that something dark was lurking beneath the surface. Every kill sequence, every stalking scene, every moment of tension was underscored by Licht's compositions. His music was as much a part of Dexter as Michael C. Hall's performance. Sadly, Daniel Licht passed away in 2017 at the age of 60 from a rare form of cancer. He had been diagnosed while working on the video game Dishonored 2. His passing was a significant loss for the franchise and for the broader world of television music. For Resurrection, the composing duties were taken over by Pat Irwin. Rolf Kent's main title theme, that iconic, playfully sinister melody that plays over the morning routine opening credits, remained unchanged throughout the original 8-season run. It became one of the most recognizable television themes of its generation. I mentioned earlier that Michael C. Hall was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma during the filming of Season 4, but let me expand on that because it's a remarkable story. Hall found out about his diagnosis while the production was in full swing. He chose to continue working through treatment rather than halt production. The makeup and wardrobe departments worked carefully to disguise the physical effects of his chemotherapy. If you go back and watch season 4 closely, knowing what Hall was going through, you might notice subtle changes in his appearance. But the production team did an extraordinary job of maintaining continuity. Hall eventually made a full recovery and has continued to be the face and voice of the franchise. Even in Original Sin, where a younger actor named Patrick Gibson plays the young Dexter, Hall provides the internal monologue voiceover. His voice is so inextricably linked to the character that it would feel wrong to have anyone else do it. The cultural impact of Dexter extends well beyond television ratings and critical reviews. The show played a pioneering role in the popularization of the morally ambiguous anti-hero. Before Dexter, the idea of an audience actively rooting for an active serial killer pushed boundaries that most networks wouldn't go near. After Dexter proved it could work, the door opened for a wave of darker protagonists in modern television. The character's creation was actually indirectly inspired by a real-world case. Pedro Rodrigues Filho, a Brazilian serial killer known as Pedrinho Matador, exclusively targeted other criminals. His story influenced the conceptual DNA of the character, though obviously the show took the idea in a very different direction. And then there's the darker side of Dexter's cultural legacy. The show has been cited in several real-world criminal cases where perpetrators claim to have been directly inspired by Dexter Morgan's methodology. Some of these cases involved the use of plastic wrap, dismemberment techniques, and even the invocation of a personal code to justify the killings. It's a disturbing footnote to the franchise's history and one that raises genuine questions about the impact of media on behavior. The show's creators never intended for Dexter to be a role model, obviously. The entire point of the series is that his lifestyle is unsustainable and destructive. But art doesn't always land the way its creators intend, and some people apparently took from the show exactly the wrong message. There was also a notable controversy when CBS, the broadcast network, acquired rights to air-edited versions of Dexter Season 1 during the 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike. This was an unusual move because Dexter was a premium cable show with extremely graphic content, and CBS was a free-to-air broadcast network. The episodes were heavily censored to earn a TV-14 rating, with graphic gore and strong language removed or toned down. The Parents Television Council protested the decision vigorously, arguing that putting a sympathetic serial killer on network television, even in an edited format, was socially irresponsible. It was a rare moment where the boundaries between premium cable content and mainstream broadcast television blurred, and it highlighted just how far Dexter pushed the envelope in terms of what audiences were willing to accept. The streaming history of the show is worth noting too. For years, Dexter was one of the most popular titles on Netflix in the United States. It was described at one point as the most rented DVD box set in Netflix's history, back when the service was primarily a disc-by-mail operation. The series eventually moved off Netflix in June of 2025, with streaming rights consolidating under Paramount Plus with Showtime. All 8 original seasons, plus New Blood, Original Sin, and Resurrection, are currently available on that platform. In terms of the broader franchise, there's quite a bit more out there beyond the main television series. Marvel Comics published a comic series titled Dexter in 2013, written by original novel author Jeff Lindsay, along with a related series called Dexter Down Under. There was even a comic book crossover called Dexter vs. Jason vs. Hackslash, which is exactly as wild as it sounds. Official video games based on Dexter have also been released, including mobile and console titles that let players investigate crime scenes and stalk victims. And the animated web series Dexter Early Cuts explored some of Dexter's earlier kills, with Michael C. Hall providing voice work, though the canon status of Early Cuts has been partially overwritten by the live-action prequel Original Sin. Jeff Lindsay's novel series ran for 8 books in total, published between 2004 and 2015, concluding with Dexter is Dead. The novels diverged significantly from the show after the first book. In the novels, Dexter's stepchildren Cody and Astor are budding sociopaths themselves, and Dexter begins training them the way Harry trained him. The books also took the Dark Passenger in a supernatural direction, eventually revealing it to be an ancient parasitic entity rather than a psychological construct. The television series wisely avoided this route, keeping the character grounded in human psychology. The show's interpretation of the Dark Passenger as a coping mechanism rather than a literal demon is, in my opinion, far more unsettling and far more interesting. Something else that I think is worth talking about is the show's relationship with its own endings. Dexter as a franchise has had an unusually complicated relationship with finality. The original series ended with the lumberjack scene in 2013, which was so widely despised that the franchise essentially came back from the dead specifically to correct it. New Blood was explicitly designed to give Dexter a better ending. Harrison shooting his father was supposed to be the definitive conclusion, the cycle broken, the story over, and then Resurrection brought him back, again. You can read this as a cynical cash grab, a franchise refusing to let its most profitable character stay dead, but you can also read it thematically. Dexter Morgan is a character who cannot be killed, not by his brother, not by the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation, not by the Trinity Killer's revenge, not by a hurricane, not even by his own son. The violence sustains him, the darkness keeps him alive. On some level, Resurrection is making the argument that the Dark Passenger is unkillable. That you can't shoot your way out of generational trauma, you can't end a cycle by adding more violence to it. Whether that's brilliant storytelling or convenient franchise management is up to you. But I find it genuinely interesting that a character built around the idea of controlled death keeps refusing to die. The franchise also shows an interesting pattern in its release history that mirrors the show's own themes of reinvention and return. Season 8 ended in September 2013. New Blood premiered in November 2021, more than 8 years later. Original Sin dropped in December 2024. Resurrection followed in July 2025. The gaps between these shows get shorter and shorter, like the Dark Passenger getting hungrier, demanding more frequent feeding. The franchise itself behaves like its protagonist. It tries to stop, it goes quiet for years, and then it comes back. Let me share a few more specific details that I think will stick with you. The slice of life, Dexter's boat, is registered out of Coral Cove Marina in Miami. In Season 2, when the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation is at its height, the police begin surveilling marinas where the butcher might be keeping a boat. Dexter, realizing the net is closing, moves his boat from one marina to another. That change of location is one of the details LaGuardia later uses to connect Dexter to the butcher case. Even something as simple as moving a boat has consequences in this world. Another detail that rewards close attention is Dexter's relationship with his stepchildren, Aster and Cody. Rita's kids from her abusive first marriage. When Dexter first starts dating Rita, the children are just part of the cover story. They're tools to make him look normal. But something genuinely interesting happens over the first few seasons. Dexter starts caring about them. Not in the performative way he cares about his co-workers, in a real way. When Cody runs away from home because he's upset about his biological father, Paul, being in jail, Dexter's the one who knows exactly where to find him. He goes straight to the park where Cody used to have supervised visits with Paul, and sure enough, the kid is on the swings. That's not a calculated gesture, that's someone who pays attention because he cares. And Dexter, of course, dismisses it as part of his mask, but the audience can see otherwise. After Rita's death, Aster and Cody move in with their grandparents. They drift out of Dexter's orbit, and by the later seasons, they're barely mentioned. It's one of the more realistic and quietly heartbreaking details in the show. In real life, when families fracture, kids often end up displaced. The adults around them are dealing with their own grief and chaos, and the children just get shuffled. Aster and Cody lost their mother to a serial killer, lost their stepfather to his double life, and were raised by people who weren't their parents. It's a small, understated tragedy that the show doesn't linger on, but it's there if you're looking. I also want to talk briefly about the physical spaces of the show because they're more meaningful than most people realize. Dexter's apartment is this clean, orderly, minimalist space. Everything has a place. Nothing's out of line. It looks like a model home rather than a place where someone actually lives. And that's the point. The apartment is another mask. It's designed to look normal, to present the image of a functional adult, while the most important thing in it is hidden inside an air conditioning unit. The apartment is Dexter in miniature, clean on the outside, hiding something terrible on the inside. Miami Metro's police station, by contrast, is chaotic and lived in. Desks are cluttered, people are shouting. There's an energy and messiness to it that reflects actual human behavior. And Dexter moves through this chaos like a ghost. He's present but separate. He participates in conversations but never initiates them unless it serves a purpose. He's helpful but forgettable. That's the training. That's the mask. And watching him navigate a room full of detectives who don't know they're standing next to a serial killer creates this constant, low-level tension that the show never lets you forget. The kill rooms are the opposite of both. They're stripped of everything, no personality, no warmth, just plastic and tools, and a table. The kill room is the only space where Dexter is fully himself. No mask, no performance, no pretense, which means the most honest version of Dexter Morgan exists only in the moments when he's about to take a life. That's a profoundly disturbing realization when you sit with it. Let me also mention something about the show's use of water as a recurring motif, because once you notice it, you see it everywhere. Dexter disposes of his victims in the ocean. Rita dies in a bathtub full of blood. Arthur Mitchell's first victim in each cycle dies in a bathtub. Dexter's mother's blood pooled on the floor of a metal container. Dexter fakes his death by driving his boat into a hurricane, into the water. Harrison is found sitting in a pool of blood, a liquid environment mirroring the womb. Water in Dexter is simultaneously life and death, cleansing and contamination. It's where bodies are hidden and where trauma begins. The ocean that Dexter uses to make his victims disappear is the same ocean that surrounds the Miami he lives in every day. He can see his crimes from his balcony if he looks hard enough. The past is always right there, just below the surface. And then there's the recurring motif of holidays and celebrations being interrupted by violence. The Thanksgiving episode in Season 4 at the Mitchell house. The Christmas party where the fat lady from Gryffindor Tower. Wait, wrong franchise. But you get the idea. Dexter often schedules kills around family events. He ducks out of birthday parties and holiday dinners. He answers calls from the police while sitting at the dinner table with Rita and the kids. The show uses these moments to highlight the absurdity and horror of Dexter's dual existence. He's supposed to be carving a turkey, and instead he's planning to carve up a person. The domesticity makes the violence worse, and the violence makes the domesticity feel fraudulent. One more thing before we head toward the close. The show's approach to internal monologue is genuinely unique in television. Most shows that use voiceover treat it as exposition. The character tells you what they're thinking or explains what's happening on screen. Dexter's voiceover does something much more interesting. It lies. Dexter's narration is unreliable. He tells us he doesn't feel things. We can see that he does. He tells us relationships don't matter to him. His behavior says otherwise. He tells us the dark passenger is in control. But we watch him make deliberate, calculated choices. The gap between what Dexter tells us and what we actually see is where the real story lives. And it means that on a rewatch, when you're no longer taking Dexter at his word, the entire show shifts. Scenes you interpreted one way the first time look completely different when you stop trusting the narrator. It's like watching a different show. And that's a big part of why it gets darker. Because the Dexter you thought you knew, the charming, self-aware serial killer who lets you into his head, turns out to be performing for you too. The audience isn't exempt from the mask. We're just another relationship Dexter is faking his way through. The show's pilot episode was directed by Michael Cuesta, who established the visual grammar for the entire series. He created the template for how kill scenes would look, how Miami would feel, and how Dexter's internal world would be represented on screen. Every director who came after worked within the framework Cuesta built. Multiple directors returned for numerous episodes across the run, including Keith Gordon, Tony Goldwyn, Steve Schill, and John Dahl. Michael C. Hall himself made his directorial debut with a Season 8 episode titled Every Silver Lining, which is a nice piece of trivia. The filming of the original pilot was actually disrupted by 3 separate hurricanes. Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, and Hurricane Wilma all hit during the production period. The fact that one of those hurricanes shared a name with Dexter's future wife is the kind of coincidence that you couldn't write. And speaking of the original pilot, there's a detail in it that takes on entirely new meaning once you've seen the whole series. When Dexter first enters his apartment and goes to his air conditioning unit to retrieve his blood slide box, the camera lingers on the ritual. The careful removal of the casing, the reverent way he handles the box, the satisfaction on his face as he places a new slide next to the others. On first viewing, it's just establishing character. On a rewatch, knowing how those slides will eventually be discovered by Lagerta and Deborah, knowing how they'll contribute to Dokes being framed and Lagerta being murdered, that scene becomes something else entirely. Every slide in that box is a domino that hasn't fallen yet. And Dexter places each one with such care, completely unaware that he's building the evidence that will eventually destroy everything he cares about. All right, I've been walking you through the dark for a while now. Let's start heading toward something lighter, or at least toward an ending. Because even a story this dark deserves a proper sign-off. But before we get to the sign-off, I want to do what the show itself does so well. I want to sit with what we've covered and let it breathe. Because I think the reason Dexter gets darker every time you revisit it isn't just about the plot twists or the shocking deaths. It's about what the story is actually saying beneath all of that. On the surface level, the most obvious level, Dexter is a show about a serial killer who kills other serial killers. It's a vigilante fantasy. It scratches the same itch as any revenge movie or crime thriller where the bad guys get what's coming to them. And on your first watch, that's plenty. It's satisfying. It's exciting. Dexter catches people the system can't catch, and he makes them pay. There's a primal appeal to that. But just below that surface, there's a story about trauma and what it does to people across generations. Laura Moser's murder in that shipping container didn't just create one killer. It created at least 2, possibly 3 if you count Harrison. The violence didn't stay in that container. It leaked out, contaminated everything it touched, and kept spreading for decades. And the people who tried to contain it, Harry, Vogel, even Dexter himself, only made it worse. Every attempt to control the damage created new damage. Every bandage ripped open a new wound. Harry tried to fix Dexter by teaching him to kill in a controlled way. And it worked until Harry saw the result and killed himself. Deborah tried to fix the situation by covering for Dexter, and it worked until she had to murder Lagerta and destroy her own soul. Dexter tried to fix things by faking his death and disappearing, and it worked until Harrison grew up damaged and angry and came looking for him. Harrison tried to fix things by shooting Dexter, and it seemed like it worked until Dexter was resuscitated and the whole thing started over again. The pattern is always the same. Someone sees the problem, applies a solution, and the solution becomes the next problem. It's an engine that runs on good intentions and produces suffering, and I think that's the deepest, most uncomfortable thing the show has to say. Not that evil people exist, we already know that. But that the people who try to fix things, who genuinely want to help, who act out of love and duty and desperation, often make things catastrophically worse. Harry Morgan loved Dexter, I believe that sincerely. He took in a traumatized child, gave him a home, tried to protect him. But his love was conditional on Dexter following the code, and the code was built on the assumption that Dexter was fundamentally broken. So Harry's love, no matter how genuine, was also a prison. It told Dexter that he couldn't be normal, couldn't feel real things, couldn't connect with other humans except through pretense. And Dexter lived inside that prison for his entire adult life. Deborah loved Dexter too, and her love led her to commit murder, to become the thing she spent her career fighting against, to lose her moral identity so completely that the writers couldn't find a way to bring her back. Deb's love for Dexter was her defining characteristic and ultimately her destruction. Even Rita loved Dexter. She loved him without knowing what he was. She accepted his strangeness, his emotional distance, his long absences. She believed in a version of him that didn't exist, and she died for it in the most literal and horrible way possible. The show is, at its core, a tragedy about love, about how love for damaged people can become its own form of damage, about how the desire to protect someone can lead you to enable the worst parts of them, about how the people closest to us are often the people most harmed by our worst qualities. And that's why it gets darker on every rewatch. The first time through, you're focused on the plot. Will Dexter get caught? Will he outsmart the FBI? Will the Trinity killer be stopped? Those are external questions with external answers. But the second time through, you're focused on the relationships. You're watching Harry teach his son to kill and calling it fatherhood. You're watching Deb smile at her brother without knowing she's looking at a murderer. You're watching Rita plan a family with a man who hides dismembered body parts in his air conditioner. And those aren't questions with answers, they're just sadness. By the third or fourth viewing, you stop seeing individual scenes and start seeing patterns. The shipping container echoing in the bathtub, the blood slides mirroring the kill rooms, Brian outside the window watching the family he was denied, Harry's vomit on the floor of Dexter's apartment, the moment he realized what the code actually looked like in practice. These images connect to each other across seasons, across decades, across generations, and they form a picture that's much larger and much darker than any individual storyline. I've been thinking a lot about what the title of this video means. Dexter lore that gets darker every time you revisit it. And I think the "it" in that sentence isn't just the show, it's life. Because the themes Dexter explores aren't limited to fictional serial killers. Generational trauma is real. The damage parents pass to their children, often while trying to protect them, is real. The way love can become control, and control can become destruction, is real. Dexter exaggerates these things to dramatic extremes, obviously. Most people's family dysfunction doesn't involve dismemberment and body disposal, but the emotional architecture is recognizable. The feeling of being shaped by someone else's choices, of inheriting damage you didn't ask for, of trying desperately to break a pattern only to find yourself repeating it. Those are universal experiences. That's why the show resonated so deeply with so many people. Not because everyone secretly fantasizes about being a vigilante, but because everyone knows what it feels like to carry something dark inside you and wonder if it's something you can control or something that's controlling you. Dexter calls it the dark passenger. Most of us call it something else, but the question is the same. Now, there are some things I wanted to cover tonight that we just didn't have time for, and I want to be honest about that. We didn't get deep into the specific case-by-case details of some of the later seasons. Season 5's Barrel Girl Gang and Lumen's arc deserves its own full treatment. The Jordan Chase conspiracy is a fascinating piece of world building that connects to themes of power and privilege in really interesting ways. We barely touched on the relationship dynamics at Miami Metro beyond the main players. The Angel and Lagerta romance, Quinn's compromised morality, Masuka's surprisingly layered character development, all of these could fill hours of discussion. The deeper mechanics of the code, the specific kills that bent or broke its rules, the times Dexter killed someone who didn't fit the criteria and had to live with it, that's a whole video on its own. Dexter killing his brother, Dexter almost killing Dokes before Lila intervened. The question of whether Miguel Prado deserved to die by the code's own standards, or whether Dexter was just protecting himself. These edge cases reveal more about the code's limitations than the clean kills ever could. And the supporting cast of killers throughout the series, each one serving as a distorted reflection of Dexter himself. Brian showing what Dexter could have become without Harry. The Trinity Killer showing what Dexter might become if he continues down this path for decades. Travis Marshall showing how thin the line is between moral killing and madness. Hannah McKay showing what a genuine partnership between two predators looks like. Isaac Serco showing that killers can be driven by love rather than compulsion. Each antagonist is a mirror held up to Dexter's face, and each one shows him something he doesn't want to see. I'd also love to do a deep dive into the way the franchise treats its female characters, because that's a genuinely complex conversation. Rita's death remains one of the most debated moments in the show's history, with many viewers and critics pointing out that it fits the fridging trope, where a female character is killed primarily to advance the male protagonist's emotional arc. Deborah's trajectory is similarly complicated. She starts the series as a strong, independent woman and ends it as a broken accomplice to murder. The show gives both women tremendous depth and emotional resonance, but it also puts them through extraordinary suffering in service of Dexter's story. Whether that's good storytelling or a problematic pattern depends on your perspective, and it's a conversation worth having. But those are all topics for future videos, and if you're interested in hearing more about this world, if this kind of deep dive lore exploration is your thing, I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider subscribing. There's so much more to talk about. The Ministry of Magic equivalent in Dexter's world, which is the labyrinth of Miami Metro politics, the psychology of each season's big bad, the career paths and fates of every major character, even a full breakdown of every kill Dexter ever made, and what each one reveals about where he is psychologically at that point in his life. There's enough material here for a dozen more evenings like this one, but for now, let's bring it home. What strikes me most about the world of Dexter after all these years and all these rewatches is how compassionate the storytelling actually is beneath the violence. I know that sounds strange. It's a show about a serial killer. There's blood and dismemberment, and people wrapped in plastic. But the writing consistently asks you to empathize with people who don't deserve your empathy. Brian Moser is a killer, but he's also a little boy who was abandoned. Arthur Mitchell is a monster, but he's also a victim of his own childhood trauma. Even Dexter himself, who has taken more lives than we can count, is presented not as evil, but as damaged. A child who was broken by something he didn't choose and shaped by people who thought they were helping. The show never excuses what these characters do. It doesn't ask you to forgive them. But it does ask you to understand them. And understanding is harder than forgiveness, honestly. Forgiveness lets you move on. Understanding makes you sit with the complexity. It makes you hold two contradictory ideas at the same time. That someone can be a killer and a victim. That love can be genuine and still be destructive. That good intentions can produce monstrous results. That's the darkness that deepens every time you revisit this story. Not the blood, not the crime scenes, not the shock value of who dies or how. The real darkness is the humanity in it. The recognition that the line between the people who destroy and the people who create isn't as clear as we'd like it to be. That the people who hurt us most are often the people who love us most. That sometimes the worst thing you can do to someone is try to save them. Dexter Morgan sits in his apartment looking at his blood slides, thinking about his kills, believing he's a monster pretending to be human. But maybe, after everything we've talked about tonight, the truth is simpler and sadder than that. Maybe he's a human who was convinced he was a monster. And maybe that's the darkest thing of all. All right, my friends, that's where we'll leave it for tonight. We've covered a lot of ground together. The shipping container, the code, the dark passenger, the ice truck killer, the Trinity killer, Deborah's impossible choice, Harry's suicide, Rita's bathtub, Harrison's inherited trauma, and the franchise that keeps coming back from the dead just like its protagonist. If any of this was new to you, I hope it gives you a reason to watch or rewatch the series with fresh eyes. And if you already knew all of this, I hope hearing it laid out end to end gave you some new connections to think about. Because that's the beauty of a story this dense. There's always something else hiding beneath the surface, waiting for you to notice it. In a future video, I'm definitely going to dig into more of this world. The full psychology of each season's villain, the detailed breakdown of Miami Metro and its many, many dysfunctional relationships, the expanded universe material from the comics, the novels, the web series, and maybe even a full timeline that maps every kill to the psychological state Dexter was in when he committed it. There's just so much here that one evening isn't enough. I also want to circle back to something I mentioned earlier that I think deserves its own moment. The fact that Dexter's original series was, at one point, the most rented DVD box set in Netflix history. Think about what that means for a second. Before streaming took over, before binge-watching became a cultural norm, Dexter was the show that people went out of their way to watch. They ordered physical discs, waited for them to arrive in the mail, watched them, sent them back, and ordered the next batch. That level of dedication tells you something about the show's grip on its audience. People didn't just watch Dexter, they pursued it. They made an effort. And that loyalty stayed with the franchise through years of silence, through the much maligned Season 8 ending, and through every revival announcement that followed. The relationship between the show and its audience mirrors the relationship between Dexter and the people in his life in a strange way. We keep coming back. No matter how many times the franchise disappoints us or takes a dark turn we didn't want, we keep showing up. We keep giving it another chance, because there's something about this world, about this character that we can't let go of. Maybe it's the same thing Deborah couldn't let go of, the belief that underneath the darkness, there's something worth saving. And speaking of things worth saving, I want to mention one more piece of franchise lore that often gets overlooked. The fact that Dexter Resurrection features Peter Dinklage and Uma Thurman in its cast. That's a significant escalation in terms of star power. The original series had incredible actors, obviously, Michael C. Hall, John Lithgow, Jennifer Carpenter, Jimmy Smits. But Dinklage and Thurman represent a new level of Hollywood investment in the franchise. It signals that the people making these shows believe there's more story to tell and that the audience for it is larger than ever. The original series aired its first season to about 2 million viewers per episode when you factored in DVR numbers. By season 7, that number had grown to over 6 million across all platforms. Season 4's finale was the most watched original series episode in Showtime's history at the time, pulling in 2.6 million viewers. These are premium cable numbers. You had to pay extra for Showtime. These weren't casual viewers stumbling across the show while channel surfing. These were people who chose to be there. And now the franchise has moved primarily to Paramount Plus with Showtime, putting it in the streaming ecosystem where discovery is easier and the potential audience is even larger. The first 2 episodes of Resurrection premiered on July 11, 2025, with the rest following weekly. That hybrid release model, 2 episodes to hook you and then 1 a week to keep you engaged, is the same approach that's worked for other major streaming properties. It suggests the network sees Dexter as a tentpole franchise, something to build an audience around rather than just a legacy title coasting on nostalgia. Whether Resurrection and its planned sequels can live up to the legacy of those first 4 seasons remains to be seen. But the fact that the franchise keeps regenerating, keeps finding new angles and new stories to tell within this world, suggests that there's something fundamentally resonant about the questions Dexter raises. Can a damaged person live a normal life? Can violence be controlled or only redirected? Is anyone truly beyond redemption? And maybe the most important question of all, one that the show asks every viewer implicitly from the first episode to the last: who are you rooting for? And what does that say about you? But for now, this has been a good night. A long one, a dark one, but a good one. I really appreciate you spending this time with me. Whether you stayed for the whole thing or drifted off somewhere around the Code of Harry, thanks for being here. It means a lot. Stay safe out there. Watch out for your dark passengers and sweet dreams. If you enjoyed tonight's deep dive and want to make sure you catch the next one, the subscribe button is right there. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it really does help more than you'd think. These videos take a long time to research and put together, and knowing there are people out there who actually want to hear more of this stuff is what keeps me going. So thank you. Truly. Whether you've been here from the first video or this is your first time stumbling across the channel, I appreciate you being here. And if you're one of those people who fell asleep somewhere around the Code of Harry and is now waking up to this, good morning, you missed some wild stuff. You might want to rewind. But also, I hope you slept well. That's the whole point of this after all. Good stories, good company, and a gentle drift into the dark. Not the Dexter kind of dark, the comfortable kind. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, tonight's the night. Just kidding, go to sleep.